So if you keep up with Counter-Strike, you'll know that BC Game are kind of like the Dollar General Temu Falcons. They spend a whole bunch of money, they're still stuck in tier 2, and honestly their decisions have been just as bad as Falcons. Now obviously Falcons just won a major, but honestly before that major win, they were kind of on the same track the BC Game were, where they spend a whole bunch of money, they get to a point where they've spent so much money and they don't have the results, right? They only had PGL Bucharest with the old core, which was like Dexter and Kixon and Tessis. They hadn't won with this new group of players and, you know, Kioske, Monesi, Nico. They hadn't won with those guys, and they finally got the major, but now we're on the BC Game, right? BC Game were probably the biggest people we were watching, besides maybe Navi for the offseason, and they made a lot of moves. As you can see, this is their current team, and they finally went the route of not buying a core, but creating a core themselves and trying to build up into the VRS, just like a team like 100 Thieves did last season. But before we get to this, and if they are legit, I think we need to quickly look at how they got here, right? Because BC Game has spent a lot of money and have made a lot of bad decisions. They started off with Guardian, Lekro, they had Joel, who's now permanently banned, they had Casanito, then they brought in the Bleed guys, Nexa, they had Nock, they also had Cypher, they had Prime Taps, then they kind of switched it up and they got rid of those guys. We need to talk about how much money they've spent to get here, to get to a point where they're not even tier 1 yet. But like I said, let's go back in the past, obviously. So if you've been keeping up with BC Game, obviously they got rid of Cypher, Prime Taps, all those guys. When they brought in Simple, he kind of joins the roster. We see that that buyout, right, is probably somewhere maybe in the 7 figures, probably really high 6 figures, because the only teams that could loan out Simple, which honestly loaning isn't as expensive as a whole buyout because you have to buy out their whole contract, and the only team that could loan him out was Falcons at first. So clearly the money to get him on a loan was pretty high. Then he goes to FaZe, and FaZe aren't some cheap org, right? They're in the S&P 500. Their stock might not be the greatest, but I mean, they're a storied organization, and they couldn't even fully buy him after the Austin Major. So they probably dropped about somewhere around the $1 million mark, I would say, to outbid to buy out his contract. So obviously now we have Simple. He joins the team doesn't do very well, so now we got to make some changes. So now we're going to bring in Electronic to the team, which I'll be honest, I don't know why Electronic's here. I think Simple wanted him. He gets benched on VP, they buy him. I don't know if they bought him out, but he joins BC Game. Obviously they don't have a team after that. They kind of just bomb out of events and they fall super far down into the rankings, even though I think they had like one tier 1 event. So now they need a new core and they buy the Saw core. So this comes out late last year, that they have their sights set on this trio of Saw. They're going to buy basically the 22nd ranked VRS core in like the global rankings, not just Europe, because they would have made the major if the cutoff was different. So this is a good idea. Let's buy the core. They're going to be number 22. But as I said, we kind of know what they're going to do with this core. They're going to do what we all think, which is they're going to buy the core. We don't know the price at the moment when this gets released. And they're basically just going to play with these guys. You need about 5 VRS official matches at ranked events to get a core. And then once you have that, you can basically move around players as long as you keep that main 3. That's how the VRS works. And then they're going to basically drop these guys once they have cores, replace them one by one. So then it'll probably be like Simple, Electronic, and then they're just going to kind of take away Mutiris, and then they'll bring in an IGL, then they'll take away Aragorn and bring in another support player. They'll take out a Crazy, bring another support player in. So that's what they're going to do. And if we know that, then obviously the Saw guys know that too. And you could tell that by the way that they played. And it all started to show really obviously at this. At IEM Krakow against FaZe, they're down on Dust 2, and Mutiris hits a crazy 1v4 to basically bring them back into the game.
Desperate grasps at the heroic play that saves the day, and no one's been able to land it. Oh, Mutiris! Oh, and he's got it!
This is a moment in the game, if you were watching, that this should be the turning point. This should be a turning point where they get hyped, they get into the game, they're there, and now all of a sudden they're about to start a comeback. The team should celebrate. No one cares. No one cared. Even the casters were like, okay, I guess no one's going to celebrate. Like, everyone was at a point of like, wow. And what it showed was these guys have no chemistry, because basically you're coming in to be removed later on. Why would you ever try to set up a system, do any of that, when you know that the second that this core is built upon, that they're just going to get rid of you? Now, obviously, BC Game, they tried to stick with it longer than they should have. From the sources that we see, Overdrive estimates that they've spent about $2.5 million on the SAW core, and that is a crazy amount. I don't know why they spent so much on it. I know that they were a decently ranked VRS core, and now they are the new Falcons, because Falcons won a major, so now you can't hate on Falcons as much because they got their trophy. All that money finally paid off. But now it's BC Game, who have basically spent probably the most besides Falcons in the scene to get the team that they have currently. So obviously we've been over, right? Simple was a pretty big buyout. Electronic, I couldn't find I don't think he was a buyout. They might have to buy out his contract, but he was benched on VP. So let's get to this current team. Is it gonna be legit? So they obviously brought in Magix to IGL. He didn't have to pay. He was already off Astralis for a while. He's kind of sitting on the bench, and he had at the end of his Astralis tenure brought up the fact that maybe he'd want to IGL, right? Once you get a little bit older in your career and in Counter-Strike, you start to kind of lean more towards that IGL role. It's just what the older players do. And I think Magix can be a pretty good IGL, right? He was under great IGLs. He was under Apex. He was under Glaive during the device, like, not the device, the Astralis crazy era where they were the best team and honestly are still the best team that has ever touched Counter-Strike. And then if you watched, obviously Senzu was loaned to Passion UA, and then BC Game bought out that loan from Mongols so he could be on their team for their last two events. So he plays at IEM Atlanta and CS Asia Championships, but the team that goes there is not the final team. Obviously they have Crazy, they have Skrunk playing as their IGL, who's their assistant coach, and Skrunk is terrible. On Overpass against Bait, I think he took him maybe, I don't know, it was like something like until the second half to get a kill, and he got one kill. And I think it was on pistol on the change of the half. So obviously, like, this isn't the final team, and we all knew that. And they didn't perform very well because we knew that this was the team that wasn't going to be the final roster. So now we get to this, right? We have Senzu. They announced Magix. They brought in Taz at the beginning of last season, and I think Taz is a great addition, I'll be honest. I think Taz is a good coach. I think his time at G2 was kind of soured at the end because he lost all of his pieces, right? He lost Nico, he lost Monacy, and he had to build a whole new, basically, system under Hunter, and it didn't work out at first, and they kind of got rid of him right off the bat. They bring him in. I think he is a very good coach for the reason why I think Kixon was a bad IGL for the Falcons, which is Kixon doesn't have the authority over players like Nico and, you know, Monacy, these guys with accolades and trophies, top of their game. Taz has the trophies. He's been in the scene a long time, so he's able to talk over someone like a Simple, who we know through watching vlogs and comms that he's a very, I would say, hawkish kind of player when it comes to his IGLs. He's very hanging over them. He puts a lot of feedback in, which can be a good thing, but sometimes when Simple tilts, it turns into a bad thing because he's basically just shit-talking his whole fucking team. We saw that when he had Boomich on the team. He was basically saying Boomich was trash and a shithole like half the fucking time he was on the team. But we got the 4, right? So now we need the 5th. And it comes out. So then it comes out in the offseason that BC Game are setting their sights on Mzinho of all players. I thought it was going to be Lonks coming in as the 6th. Or they might bring someone up from, like, you know, tier 2 that we wouldn't have known. They were kind of teasing that it was a young player who had major experience. I did not expect Mzinho, but I think the Mzinho signing is amazing and is exactly what they needed, because I think Mzinho is one of the best anchors in the game. He has always been a rock on the Mongols ever since they started to really form their identity about the second year into their project. And I think him matching up with Mzinho is going to be a great duo, because these guys have played forever together, basically almost their entire careers in professional Counter-Strike at the top level, have been together, they're best friends, and it makes the team dynamic a lot better. And Mzinho even says in his interview after he joins BC Game is that, you know, this was the time he felt like to join BC Game, because Mzinho has been trying to bug him to join with him.
Okay, Mzinho asked me before, and I told him that next time, not this time. So yeah, I decided that. And at that time, Mzinho typed me again, like, okay, I'm asking you last time. So last time for this season. So, and it's kind of linked up, and I said, okay.
Because they bought out Mzinho. He was not on loan anymore, which is a great thing, because these players who go on loan after loan after loan, I feel like they just kind of lose all their momentum, even if they have a good loan stint, if the team can't buy them. Look at someone like Flamus, who I feel like his best fit was BetBoom, but they probably just didn't have the money to buy him from Virtus Pro, who were charging like an arm and a leg to try to get this guy off of his fucking roster, even though you're not going to put him on, even though you see that he clearly has the talent to be there. But back to BC Game. So is this team legit? Obviously, I can't tell the future, but I think this team can be legit. I think they're going about it the right way, and they have a really good opportunity to just get some big confidence, right? Their first event coming up is going to be this Elisa esports event. Not a whole lot of big names here, right? We do have Ents, right? Ents, we all know Ents. But they, as you can tell, they've kind of fallen off. They went back on their team that they had like top, I think somewhere around the top 50 when they benched them, and now they want to go all finish. Whatever. You do you want to restart the Finnish program, cool. But they're all the way back to 201. They basically have their entire academy roster plus Hinu, which they got from, I believe, Havu. Okay, Hinu was actually, they got Hinu from, he was on Infuriity and he was on Jono though first, playing with Alu, Juho, kind of some older Finnish guys, and then some two young guys. Sinku is another like small Finnish team. Their academy team is now their main roster. Havu is like probably the best Finnish team out there. They're pretty decent in online tier 2. We have BC Game, who can probably get at least a VRS ranking here. Trainwrecks is an Estonian team. Bojang is just kind of a mixed Finnish team. Kuusamo is another Finnish team based out of Kuusamo in Finland. And then Rounds is like another Finnish team. So this is basically a Finnish event, but it's a good start. It's a good way to get in there and win an event, get your confidence up, try out some new things against competition that you're probably 100 times better than, okay? We're talking about Mzinho, Mzinho, Magix, Electronic, Simple. These guys have probably played combined more games than all the people at this event combined, right? These guys have been here for multiple years. They should easily win this. Obviously, we don't see what they're coming up with, but I think if they're on this track, they can easily be a legit team and make it into tier 2 seasons, right? I think if you win that event, you're probably going to play somewhere around 160 maybe in the VRS rankings. That gives you at least invites to CCT, to European Pro League, or not European Pro League, European Pro Series. Gives you places like a no win or like nod win. You can go to LANs. So I think this is a big thing. I think they should also sign up for Radio X Imperium Cup. Anything that they can get to. This should be your grind season. They should be at as many events as they can make, because this is the season you need to build up your VRS. And if they don't do this, I don't know where they go from here, guys. I'll be honest. If they don't have a successful, say, 2 seasons, right? This is a team where your expectations aren't that you're going to make the major this year. You're not going to make Singapore. But you want to make, I think Buenos Aires is going to be the next one, unless they change it around. But I'm pretty sure Fire, Contour, Buenos Aires is the first of 2027. You want to be at least in striking distance of Buenos Aires, if not making it. Even this season, if you're at least somewhat on the outside looking in on the rankings, getting to basically a major in Singapore, that's a good thing too. But the other option is, if this doesn't work, here's what you do. You drop Electronic, because I think Electronic is the worst player on this team. As soon as he gets going and get the fuck out of the team, I think the team is going to get 100 times better, because he made some really, really, really dumb plays against Vitality when they played them at Atlanta. And the Mirage game they could have won, and he did that stupid ass play when he jumped out the window for no reason whatsoever. But you drop Electronic and you bring in a guy like Vexite. If they're able to get someone like a Vexite who's very good in the Asian scene, Asian, Oceania, whatever you want to call it, he plays at Asian events, okay? He plays in that region. But that would mean that that team would then count as an Asian team, because you would have a core of a guy from Australia and 2 Mongolians. So that gives you Asian, like basically your Asian status as a team, and boom, easy major. You get into the major. That's basically the fluke way to get in the majors now, is you go into regions like NA or Asia and basically just take a player from there. You get a core together, you get into the major, but you have like 2 strong players from Europe. With Senzu and Mzinho, you actually have really good players from Asia, instead of what NA teams do. They just like pick random oppers or like junior to make the major. In closing though, this team should be legit. I think a reasonable status for them at the end of this season, when we're at the Singapore major and you look at the VRS rankings, they should be anywhere between 80 to about 45-ish, maybe even top 40. If they're lucky, if they go on the grind. If they don't go on the grind, they're going to be probably back 80, maybe even 100. But you need to go in the grind. When you don't have a VRS ranking, you need as many officials as you can against teams that are ranked, because that will boost you up in the rankings. We saw that with 100 Thieves. They started off as no VRS ranking. They had a great Roman Imperium Cup, and they're already number 100 almost, right? Because they played against teams at that Roman Imperium Cup that are in the top 50, that are sometimes in the top 30. So these are teams and events that you need to go to as BC Game. You have the players who can compete against any tier 2 team, any tier 1.5 team, and depending on how these guys perform, any tier 1 team. So if you guys enjoy this video and this kind of content, I'm going to be making a lot of CS content. So if you enjoy that and like that, hit the comment and subscribe button. Let me know how you like the face cam. I should have more videos coming soon, and I'll talk to you guys later. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Peace.